how do we get our customers to leverage this great tech in a way that is authentic and true to our value proposition and our reputation of being easy to use, customer first, really trying to solve customer problems. And so we launched this integration platform called Stack, which is really our desire is to build a very robust platform that brings on a bunch of different great partners and allow our customers to leverage their tools how they need to so they can build their own tech stack to solve their business problems.
I don't throw darts at a board. I bet on sure things. Read Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Every battle is won before it's ever fought. Think about it.
Welcome to another episode of the Profitable Property Management Podcast. I'm your show host, Jordan Muela, and today I'm interviewing Matthew Kaddatz from AppFolio. Matt, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
We actually just saw each other roughly a week ago at the AppFolio User Summit. There was some exciting stuff to announce around an integration, but we're really here to talk a little bit about the big picture ecosystem of what's going on in residential property management. And it's a lot. There's a lot of movement. I've been in this space for a decade plus, and within the last year, there's probably been as much movement as there were for the previous 3 or 4 years. Before we get into all of that, I want to talk a little bit about your background. What is your background specifically with property management, and how did you become a part of AppFolio?
Yeah, good question. So back in 2006, I was graduating college looking for something to do, and I decided to start a property management company. We had some friends that were developing property down in Mexico, and they were looking for someone to turn it over to, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur, really, and real estate was hot, 2006, right at the peak. And so I told them, hey, let me go try to run your properties, and went down there, started a business.
This was long-term, short-term?
This was both long-term, short-term, and community association.
Oh, glad for punishment.
Yeah. All three of those got into it with a long-term community association agreement with a couple short-term rentals that were within it, and kind of built the business in the Rosarito area.
Awesome. So then how did that parlay into working with AppFolio?
Yeah, so did that for 7 years. I ended up selling the company after 5 years to a big outfit out of Texas, Associa. They do community management across the United States, big player in that space. And
Brian Corona and company, right?
Yeah, John Corona.
John Corona, right.
And I did the deal with his son, Joey.
Awesome.
Yeah, good outfit, stayed on for 2 years, but I was really looking to get back into technology. I had studied computer science in my undergrad and really enjoyed computer science, but didn't want to sit behind a computer all the time and wanted to start business. So did the property management thing, loved growing the business, got it to about as good as I thought I could get it for the market without, quite a bit of effort to keep growing it successfully, and then moved on to look for a tech company job. I found AppFolio, and I thought, when I got a phone call from John Walker, the founder. This was back when we were under 200 people, and he pitched me on the company, and I thought to myself, there's no way I'm working for a software company in property management.
Too close to home.
I knew the industry, right? And I wanted something different. I was looking to explore different business type ideas. And anyways, I came up, got a tour, and just fell in love with the company, the culture, the leadership team. They were really doing things right from my perspective. And what I wanted more than anything was to be at a place where I could learn. And so here I am, almost 10 years later, still with AppFolio, learning quite a bit every day.
Are you technical?
I have a technical skill set, but my job is not technical.
So where did you start, like career-wise? Where did you move through the company?
Yeah, so I started in onboarding. So I worked with new customers coming onto our platform, and probably myself onboarded a couple hundred customers back in 2013 through 2016. I also led our West Coast onboarding team. So worked with a group of onboarding managers to help all new customers get into the software. Gave me a great opportunity to learn the softwares that existed at that time, which largely are still here today, and get to see all different types of property managers, from the single family fee manager to the multifamily owner operator, community association manager, across the board. Really got to experience quite a bit of the property management world, ecosystem, and tech. But I was looking for more than just onboarding. I wanted to be part of the strategic side of the business. And an opportunity came up for me to join and lead some of our value-added services. So that's an internal term, but things like tenant screening, websites, our Lisa product, those are things we sell to people who are already customers. And I got an opportunity to come in and take over a acquisition that we had made, RentLinks, and figure out what to do with it. And that interacted with a product called Premium Leads, and figure out that business and set up a strategy. And from there, I got a few more products like tenant screening under my management, and did both operational and product strategy directional things. And really enjoyed myself there. Got to really understand those businesses very well. And then recently, well, not super recently, but about a year and 9 months ago, opportunity came up to take over really single family product. So lead our product efforts for the single family
And
operator.
how big of a focus is single family relative to the other verticals for AppFolio?
So, I mean, I would say single family is our bread and butter. It's where we got our start. It's really the community that helped us become a great platform to begin with. And the majority of our customers still to this day are single family and what I like to call boutique multifamily. So those multifamilies that you don't really have on-site management for. And we still have quite a bit of product effort on that customer base. It's a growing segment, and we still grow that segment as a company quite aggressively.
So the majority of the units on the platform are single family.
Single family and boutique multifamily.
Collectively, got
Correct.
it. So residential more broadly.
Residential, yeah.
Let's kind of take a tour through the different eras and the epochs of the company. Ultimately, I want to get to today, and really I want to hone in on the last 5 years and the reputation and the sensibilities of the company leading up to this most recent marketplace announcement. But take me back to the early days. The time frame that you mentioned, 2011, 2012, 2013, I think it's fair to say that looking back, AppFolio was really crushing and in a serious groove at that point. There was some serious market expansion that necessarily displaced some other vendors. There was somebody before that presumably was more embedded. AppFolio comes on the market and really becomes, over, let's say, a 10-year period, the dominant vendor in the category. If you look back to kind of the seedbed, what was it that led to that streak of unprecedented growth?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to timing, and our founders had quite a clear perspective on technology waves. So SaaS software was not a thing early on, or early 2010. It wasn't as big as it is today, where every single system is on software as a service.
So it was not primarily ports then. What were people transitioning from in the early days?
Early days, they were transitioning from on-prem systems as well as QuickBooks.
Can you give me some names of some of those
on-prem systems? So you had your Yardi Genesis, you had like a Tenant Pro, Promos was on-prem at that time. Some of these older put a CD-ROM in the server room type of experience is really where property management software had been for quite some time. And we came out with property management software in the cloud. And one of our early hurdles was just convincing people that they didn't need a CD to put in their server, right? They could log in, and security was an issue. People were migrating their software to the internet, different way of paying for it, as opposed to, thousands of dollars upfront in licensing. They're paying a monthly subscription fee. Very different back then. And AppFolio was built on from day one with that in mind. And so a lot of the older systems, they either needed to rewrite their software or build a cloud type offering on top of what they already had. And so we had a tremendous leverage because we built from that mindset from day one. And we got quite a bit of traction. I think one of the things that really accelerated our ability to grow was tenant payments. So, back in the early 2000s, everyone was collecting rent in their office. Rent week was hard. I've talked to customers that hadn't gone on vacation for 25 years because rent week was hard. You had to go from rent week to paying your management fees, to paying your vendors, to paying out owners, all through paper checks, very paper heavy process. Lots of people in your office asking you hundreds of questions, trying to get your job done. Coming out with tenant payments was really possible because of cloud computing. We could give tenants a portal and let them pay rent online. And that gave people a whole week of their life back early on. And so tremendous amount of growth because of that. I think the other technology trend that we realized was mobile was going to be a big deal. And so we went all in on mobile pretty early on and really tried to build the application to be mobile friendly. You can see it on your iPhone wherever you're at, and you have the same functionality as your desktop computer. Obviously, you're probably not going to want to look at a complicated report on your iPhone, but you can if you need to. And so that's all built into the app, and that got us a lot of our early success in this space.
So you rode a number of waves that were happening at a macro level that were bigger than just AppFolio. This reminds me of Jason Lemkin, the founder of EchoSign, commenting about a competitor that had come along 5 or 6 years later, and that competitor making the claim that, hey, guys, we have a much more modern tech stack. They're old. They're antiquated. And him simultaneously pointing out, number one, it was true. Number two, it was not earned. It was simply inherited by virtue of the fact that if you show up 6 years later, the default tech stack, nobody here, do you have a CS degree?
Yeah.
So the beauty of getting a CS degree is that you're down close enough to the metal that you can begin to comprehend how it is that technology is actually built at the root level. But the majority of frontline technologists, certainly the developers that I'm hiring, they're using frameworks that somebody else built. They're off the shelf tools. And in the same way, those frameworks evolve over time. So by showing up 5 years later, you just have better tools because that's what the market gave you. If you think about some of the innovation that started with AppFolio, let's fast forward to the more recent time frame. What sticks out in your mind more recently as something that you were really personally proud of, that you felt like you were able to have some influence over and that was significant in terms of its impact for customers?
Yeah, so that probably leads us right into the integration platform we launched a few months ago, and then recently launched and announced partnership with a bunch more people like you all over there at LeadSimple. That platform is definitely, like, if you kind of look at the landscape today of PropTech investment, there is a lot of investment dollars, venture capital, private equity dollars going into tech for PropTech, right? And so because of all that, you were seeing quite a bit of what I would call like point solutions or solutions solving a specific problem, not necessarily like a full platform accounting system, but solving a specific problem. And they're creating great products. And this has been speeding up quite a bit over the last handful of years. And so what we've realized is we really need to think about how do we get our customers to leverage this great tech in a way that is authentic and true to our value proposition and our reputation of being easy to use, customer first, really trying to solve customer problems. And so we launched this integration platform called Stack, which is really our desire is to build a very robust platform that brings on a bunch of different great partners and allow our customers to leverage their tools how they need to so they can build their own tech stack to solve their business problems.
Now, folks are hearing about these integrations, and it's simultaneously excitement, enthusiasm, and there's also some market sentiment of, where was this 2 years ago? Where was this 3 years ago? Why now? If you're speaking to folks that are wondering why AppFolio allowed this pent-up frustration from the absence of this, from what felt fairly obvious, let's be real, APIs are not new. That's not some crazy innovation. In fact, it's table stakes right now. There was some significant lag in AppFolio's adoption of it. AppFolio was following what we would call broadly in the industry a walled garden approach. So this is a big, significant sea change. Please regale us with some of the story of why now and what is emblematic of AppFolio's sincere commitment to this after such long and stiff historical resistance.
Yeah, so we hear often in the marketplace how people want to be integrated, and at the same time how frustrating their experience is with other softwares and integrations. We hear that even today. The frustration that customers go through where they feel like they're pinned between two different software vendors and they're not getting their needs met. That was something that we didn't want to give that experience to our customers. And we also knew that we're good at building technology. I think what it came down to is we can't simply build technology as fast as the marketplace because of the amount of investment dollars. And that trend is only going to speed up. Having a closed ecosystem affords us the ability to control the user experience more tightly. But it also doesn't allow people to engage with the whole entire ecosystem. So the adjustment was really, realizing where the trend is going, where the ball's moving, and making sure that we can build a thoughtful strategy that's focused on the customer and brings in an ecosystem of vendors so that customers actually get their problems solved, as opposed to, are integrated with whatever technology is out there. Obviously, we're going to have an approach that is going to allow multiple vendors in specific segments to come on and provide services for our customers, but we're going to make sure those integrations are high quality and really solving customer needs.
So obviously there's a lot of significant QA. We have an integration. It wasn't a web form I filled out. It was a series of conversations, a lot of QA going throughout the process. And I'm sure the market can see and appreciate that. And it's consistent with AppFolio's broader commitment to wanting to control, manage, and QA the experience. But let me ask the question again. Why did it take so long? Just to be super direct, why did it take so long?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if I can answer it in a more clear way.
A fully satisfying.
I don't know if I can answer it in a fully satisfying way. I get the sentiment is you guys should have done this a long time ago. And I just can say it was a big decision for us to make this change. And we wanted to make sure we got it right. We have a good customer base, and we want to make sure that we're making the right investments that make their businesses move forward. And while a lot of people absolutely needed this a couple of years ago, there's a lot of people that would rather us build a specific thing for them. And so, as a product person, we're always trying to prioritize investments, right? What's best for the customer in a way that works for our business. And it became very clear, when we started building this was the right call. Before that, it just wasn't as clear.
One thing that's interesting for me, and some sympathy and some perspective, some empathetic perspective I gained, was going to the user summit and seeing the degree to which there were people on the ground that were so bought into the all-in premise. Mm-hmm. You and I were on a panel ends, walk down the steps, and some people come up to ask us a question. The question was effectively, I'm confused. AppFolio has internal products that do XYZ, and here are three people on the panel. In this case, it was LeadSimple, ShowMojo, and Property Meld that now do the same thing as the internal product that I was considering using, and I'm confused. And what I took away from that, obviously there's education in the market. Obviously you guys have your work cut out for you to communicate this repositioning. And I think with time that will inevitably, you guys will figure that out. But the reason that it was significant to me was because I got to hear from somebody that had really bought into the idea of the walled garden, the all-in-one, one login. It was helpful to me to recalibrate around just how compelling that was to a subset of people. And obviously, these are the people that are showing up to the user summit.
Right.
These are the people that are being vocal. These are the people that want to do user interviews with product people on your end. So I can see a level of affirmation and encouragement of the premise that may not be obvious to everybody else looking from the outside. At the same time, there's got to be folks wondering, is this serious? Is this for real? Are you all in? Is this going to get yanked? How would you describe and explain to the market the level of commitment that AppFolio has to really leaning into this as opposed to this just being kind of a side vestigial organ?
Right. So, I mean, this was our number one strategic initiative to get this out the door this year. It's got quite a bit of investment behind it from the top down, right? Like this wasn't just a decision that people at my level making some product decisions made. This is a decision that we really thought carefully as a company and decided, no, we're going to do this and we're going to do it really well, the same way we've done everything that we put our 2 feet in and commit to really well. So yeah, I'm really excited about this platform because it's going to be, it's already being done and it's going to continue to be done really well. A quick aside, what I love about this is being able to sit down with partners like you and others and really think through customer problems together. I think that's something that's missing in the PropTech space, right? The platform systems are like, here are documented APIs, go right to them, vendors, figure it out, have fun. We're taking a little bit different approach, making sure that we have documented APIs, obviously, but there's more that users want and need. And we want to work with our partners on this to make sure we're building out the right set to solve customer problems.
It's use case driven.
It's use case
That
driven.
was our experience. It was
Right.
very heavily use case driven from people that on the other side really understood the use case.
Right.
So if folks are asking that question about the durability, they're probably wondering about, if folks are asking the question about the commitment to Stack and the marketplace, they're probably also wondering about the commitment to the vertical. And what I'm hearing, having conversations with top brass over at AppFolio, is that the organization is recommitting itself to single family. There have been some gaps. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn.
Sure.
I think I can communicate on behalf of the market in some ways that there was a sense that AppFolio pursued other verticals, including upmarket, multifamily, HOA, whatever, for good reasons. And obviously the constituency here is mixed use. And so they do benefit from these additional product lines. But in terms of AppFolio's felt presence tangibly in the market, it's felt like it has not been the same. Let's just put it this way. It hasn't been the same as it was in the heyday of 13, 14, 15, when AppFolio was really on the come up. Does Stack coming out, does that release indicative of any changing and shifting priorities in terms of the presence specifically in the third-party, single-family residential segment?
Yeah. So, when we released Stack, we released it for the first time at NAA Apartmentalize, right? Which is a big multifamily. And if you looked at the vendors, the only vendor that's probably more in the single family crowd would be Property Meld. And we did that. The event happens earlier in the year, so there's a little bit of strategy there about releasing something with the set of vendors that makes sense for the event you're releasing it out, right? But just recently at customer conference and now here at NARPM, we get to talk about LeadSimple and ShowMojo and Pet Screening and others that are more part of this single family boutique multifamily ecosystem. So we're building this in a way where we're going to use it as we go up market, but we're also going to have plenty of emphasis on our roots in single family. And, outside of integrations, it's not just that. If you're, at the conference, you probably saw a couple of our product releases, but some of them have huge leverage for the single family audience, like our bank feed uploader, allowing bank transactions to go in. I know that's a big one in this space. Report Builder applies to both these types of spaces. So absolutely, like, very committed to building the right products for this customer space. And that's my job, right? To get the organization pointed the right direction, not only how we communicate, but also making sure our investment dollars are allocated appropriately.
So plugging the hole and addressing the issue with the open ecosystem has obviously been a significant pushback into the market. Let's talk about some of the other components of connection with the market. Another one is customer support. Mm-hmm. Customer support is huge. And it's interesting, as another software vendor, I want to communicate that there is a fine line between very straightforward support. How do I use the product as it was intended for the very straightforward features versus how do I, let's say in the case of LeadSimple, how do I re-architect a lease renewal? How do you make a lease renewal process great? Mm-hmm. How do you dial in a way that's really going to dial down your DLER and increase customer satisfaction? That's consulting.
Right.
When you cross that line, now you're talking about professional services. It's a different set of expectations. And there are world-class vendors that we both know that can come in and address those types of issues in a consulting project-based format. Mm-hmm. It's different when you're calling in support and asking those questions. How does AppFolio think about the nuance and the difference there? And what feedback and encouragement do you have for the market in terms of how you guys are thinking about your customer support function and experience, and specifically addressing some folks that may be more critical, maybe some folks that have moved to other platforms, or maybe folks that have an idea in their head that AppFolio isn't going to get on the phone, etc. The reality is people have those perceptions about every single vendor, including my own. But if you were going to address in the most charitable way a critic with that kind of feedback, what would you say?
So first I'll just say that, like, we're committed to providing a great support experience. And I myself have absolutely heard in the market some negative sentiment around our ability to execute on that in the last couple of years. And to be totally honest, there's some truth to that. And we're committed to moving that around. We're making some investments in really trying to streamline and make the user experience as they're trying to access support tools, whether it be self-support tools, which, if you can get your answer really quick with a quick little article, that's way better than even needing to pick up the phone and talking to someone, right? But that extends into when you do have a hard issue and you need to talk to someone, you need to talk to the person that has the answer. So we have a lot of smart people making sure that we're able to understand the nature of the question and then get that question to the person that actually can answer is a little bit more challenging of a problem to solve at the scale that we're at than it used to be. But there's really good technology in the marketplace that we're going to leverage to continue to make strides and improvements there. Having said that, I've been on the support side supporting migrations, right? And there is a very gray line between supporting our software and being someone's accountant. I can tell you firsthand, there are customers I would have never gotten onto our product without being their accountant. and that just needed to happen. Now, are we accountants at AppFolio, as a group? No, we're software providers, right? We're building software. And obviously we have to know a lot about accounting to build great accounting software, but it's important for the industry, in my opinion, to have a clear set of consultants or providers that they're working with if there's skill gaps. Not everyone in property management is strong with accounting. That's fine. People can have huge companies and not be great accountants, but you do need to make sure you either have that on staff or outsource to have a good offering to the market. And AppFolio is going to continue to commit to supporting customers, but we can't always reconcile your trust account for the last 2 years every single month. Now, we can definitely tell you how our software works and where to go and what to look at, but that model is a support model, and absolutely, like, there are some really good vendors that have emerged in this marketplace to provide great consulting services.
Free market in action.
Totally. And we love that they exist, and we need more of them because in reality, the market needs more of them. It's an important thing.
What is the service offering for? I don't actually know. What is the SLA? What is the service offering for support? If I'm an AppFolio user, can I call someone? Are things directed towards tickets and emails? What does that actually look like?
Yeah. So most of our support traffic during business hour comes in through a chat, and the person handling the chat will be able to either triage and solve the problem in real time via chat, or if they can't, they will schedule time after the fact. You can also call in, but we have a tighter response on chat right now, meaning you can sign in, and within a few minutes you can be able to get into the chat experience. Sometimes chat's not the right modality to solve a problem. We get that, right? And then we just work with the agent on the chat to schedule time to get the answer solved when you do need to do more of a back and forth screen share or whatever. So we have all of that available to all of our customers.
How would you articulate to the market the differentiation in positioning of AppFolio versus other vendors? Not looking for any, don't need to diss any other vendors, but everybody's looking for differentiation, and consumers don't always have clear buying criteria. Mm-hmm. The buying criteria is fuzzy. How do you stack rank it? What's most important? From your vantage point, how would you set the buying criteria universally? I'm just going to guess it's going to map well towards grading AppFolio, but if you're doing your best to be objective, how would you stack rank the buying criteria?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I don't know if it stack ranks perfectly against AppFolio, to be quite honest. I would kind of look at, like, what are the biggest business problems you're looking to solve, right? And then from there, who's working with you through a sales cycle to figure out those problems and offer solutions that make sense. So, if you're very small and you're not looking to grow, there's a whole suite of software out there that might be more basic, easier to use than a full property management system, right? If you're getting started and looking to rapidly grow, you're probably looking for something that's going to take you to a certain, like, unit count threshold, or maybe you're interested in different property types, right? Every market can be different. I know property managers that look to grow by adding new markets. I know that the property managers that look to grow by adding new types of assets that they put under management. I think you really have to have a clear sense of where your business is today and where you want it to go before you can even start evaluating software. And then you have to make sure you have the right talent in your business to leverage the software that you're buying. AppFolio is a great small business product, but it's not for every single customer that exists. Some people need something much simpler. Some people want something way more complicated. I would say, we're a very easy to use, very robust, powerful system where you can get a lot of the jobs you want done. And now you can integrate with some great vendors out there that don't do everything, that we don't solve all of the needs, right? Like, you going back to that conversation that we were part of at our customer conference, we're going to continue to invest in some of these key workflows that we have competition in, but from people on our integration platform, right? We'll continue to have investment, but there's always going to be differentiation in those product offerings, and one's going to fit for a certain type of customer and another's going to fit for another. And so I, I always go back to like, what are the problems you're trying to solve? And if you're AppFolio, if you're thinking about AppFolio, I think some of the problems we solve well is you can put multiple different types of assets in one platform. I think that's really powerful.
Walk us through that. Just give us the update.
Yeah. Well, like single family, multifamily, community association. We're have a beta going of short-term rentals, which is another big one. And we'll continue to grow our offerings and different types of properties that we'll manage over time. Having all of that in one platform, there's a lot of leverage to that. We also manage commercial buildings under ours, but if you are really niche and only do 100% commercial and are totally gigantic, like maybe we're not the best because there's a more specific commercial offering out there, potentially. You really, as a business owner, have to really understand, what are you trying to do? What are the problems you're trying to solve? And does this vendor match where I'm trying to go?
It's interesting to me watching the locus of control within the industry shift a bit, in the sense that I would say that now there more or less is an arms race on who can have the best, most complete marketplace. And the person who has that advantage will by definition attract further investment. The person who has the most apps is likely to get more. The person who has the greatest quality and depth is likely to get more. Aggregation theory, as it may be referred to in certain places. As you think about what that competition looks like, you guys have made a pretty significant bet in what I would say a more laissez-faire, free market approach. How do you feel about what you guys are doing to stay competitive, specifically with Stack, and how does it feel to be in a situation where there's a new surface area of competition? I think that's what I'm trying to say. PMS versus PMS. There's a new playing field and surface area of competition. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah. So, I mean, I really view this as an opportunity to have best-in-class integrations. I don't think AppFolio is going to have integration with every single person that has, a 3-person software company that exists. That's just not the direction we're going to go. We're going to be more for going all in with as many real players out there in the market as we can. And by real players, I mean people with tech that is being adopted by the industry and have some traction. Those types of real software vendor, there's a lot of hobbyists out there, is what I'm trying to say. And we want to have a curated list of the types of integrations that provide real value to mutual customers. And that to me snowballs into good customer sentiment, not only for us, but for someone like LeadSimple, for example. So if you can provide more robust value on our platform for your customers than someone else's, to me, that's strategic advantage that we have as a property management platform system that has an integration platform. So I think we'll just continue to invest in this platform and build out robust integrations that are high quality.
When you articulated previously that the investment in the space outstripped what AppFolio was able to execute on as an organization, that is both progressive relative to the previous stance and also fairly common sense. There is so much money coming into PropTech right now. What do you see out there that's interesting in the space? And do you think that pace of investment is likely to change at all as the economic headwinds are shifting?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll answer the pace of investment part first. So I don't know, and I would suspect maybe not. You didn't see PropTech slow down that much even recently in terms of investment. And I think the investors know that it's a relatively stable asset class, meaning
it's built on a relatively stable asset class.
The customers that are paying for software actually have recurring revenue that probably doesn't go anywhere anytime quick, right? It's not like construction or even transactional real estate, which can go up and down quite aggressively. We're a SaaS business built on top of not a SaaS business, but a recurring revenue business. So it's relatively stable. And there's a housing shortage in America that probably means rents aren't going to collapse anytime soon. There's a lot of trends that give tailwinds to this industry. So I would suspect if it slows, it's going to slow in a growth rate, not overall growth. Maybe it doesn't continue to like fly up. Potentially, it just keeps a little bit more of a linear growth path. So that's my sense on where PropTech is going. And I think we're just macro level in a trend of technology, a lot of technology being invested in. Overall, I look at the different ways you can do word processing today compared to 10 years ago when you were on Microsoft Word, right? Now there's Google Docs and Coda and like all these different types of word processing or just like documentation technologies that exist. It's overwhelming for me who sees myself as a technologist to even keep up with all of the technology that exists in the market today. So in general, I think we're definitely in a trend in technology where you're seeing a lot more investment and a lot more innovation out there that isn't being consolidated.
If you zoom out even further at the macro level, what you just brought up is a great instance because there actually were far more choices. Lotus, Coral, etc. Word killed all that. Correct. It was consolidated. And then there was a reproliferation with an expanded value prop. Word actually went through a really interesting phase where you could argue that they deprecated the quality of the product by adding needless complexity. They just kept adding things beyond the scope, I guess, out of a sense of innovation and SaaS, common sense, etc. And it stopped working, but there was another kind of innovation that the market did want, and therefore the proliferation of all of those vendors that you just highlighted has really been quite successful. When you think about innovation in this space, it's not just in pure software plays. It's also in the SaaS service hybrid. There's been significant movement over the last 3 or 4 years with players coming in and looking to consolidate, aggregate units with a promise of layering software on top to achieve and unlock unprecedented efficiencies that ultimately benefit the end consumer. That's the promise.
Right.
That's the pitch deck. That is the basis and the thesis by which capital is raised. When you see that space and the proliferation of investment that has gone into it, what are your sensibilities about the fundamentals of that thesis and what do you think is likely to shake out over the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation, right? The PropTech investment into building, I don't know, would you say it like new platforms to accelerate the ability to manage your own properties or manage
property management businesses with a software function?
Yeah, like so I could be the legacy player here right now, but I see it as, software is very expensive to build. And there's not a clear like technology movement that they're taking advantage of or leveraging that I can see, right? When you say, Microsoft stopped innovating and Google came in, you're right. Google used the cloud to let you do collaboration. And that's why everyone went to Google's productivity suite. We're still very much in a like riding the waves of SaaS. And I don't know what that next technology wave is that is going to make them able to build software much cheaper than incumbent property management software players are, or how they build it in a way that gives that much efficiency to drive the returns that they're really looking to do. When you have an already robust space of PropTech providers looking to sell really great technology to these property managers, trying to empower them to do the same thing, right? Essentially, they're trying to build great PropTech to let property managers run more efficient businesses, while you have, a property management company building technology to run themselves more efficiently. It just seems like an expensive bet in technology, unless there's a couple clear areas of leverage and they can take more of the PropTech tech stack along with it and pick up pieces of that to be great operators. Because there is something to be said that property management isn't known for being the most innovative space in the world. Adopting of technology is a little bit slower than other industries. And so I do think, though, that there's property managers that are picking up off-the-shelf tech, weaving it together the right way, and having huge leverage in the space. And so if I was a betting man, I would bet on those types of people rather than having to build your own technology from the ground up.
So if I'm hearing what you're communicating, you're saying that the R&D investment, which is substantial, when layered across a much smaller number of units, I believe you guys are public about the number of units on the platform. What is that number approximately?
6.5 million.
6.5 million. So the AppFolio R&D budget, all that CapEx is spread over 6.5 million units, as opposed to in this newer paradigm, it being spread over 100,000, 200,000. I'm being generous because we're not there yet. But let's imagine with the acquisition pace, it could certainly get there. It likely will. Those economics are very different. And so obviously the R&D investment has to be smaller, but that doesn't reduce the burden for the level of quality and finish out. You might argue that there is the ability to edit and delete aspects of the software that are not necessary based on the specific playbook that one operator is running for how they run their processes for the markets they're in. However, as you add more units, you invariably embrace complexity. If you told me that you were managing 1 million 2-story, 3-bedroom, 1,500 square foot blue houses in Austin, Texas, I would say, boy, that seems ripe for some serious efficiency.
Sure.
When you tell me you're managing 100,000 units across 20 different states in 170 different municipalities across multiple asset classes, regardless of how much conviction you have about your process, and I'm a process conviction guy, the inherent surface area, what you're inheriting based on what you're trying to service, there's necessarily complexity, which necessarily inflates the R&D. Is that, am I putting words in your mouth, or is that part of what you're getting at?
That's exactly what I'm getting at. And like, let's look at some more sophisticated operators that are running REITs and whatnot. Those large multifamily operators that already have, 40, 50, 60,000 units that they own. They're building on top of PropTech tech that already exists.
Off the shelf,
customized, customized the way they want it.
Maybe a little glue layer, maybe a data lake, maybe some fancy pants stuff on the side, but fundamentally off the shelf.
The core system is off the shelf, right? You look at multifamily. Multifamily is a much more established industry than single family. A lot of that stuff is off the shelf.
You make a very good question. That's a point worth asking. Where is Greystar's tech R&D budget?
Right. And if some Greystar execs want to go build a great tech product, they're probably going to build the next platform system, not a platform system for Greystar.
That would only benefit them.
There's just a bigger market for people that want to buy technology than the captive market that you have.
And as you said before, this money coming in is competing against everybody.
Totally.
It is the free market in action. It is the SMB benefiting from the public equity markets, putting money to fund competition that ultimately drives efficiencies for Main Street. That's beautiful.
Totally.
But it also means that it's downward pressure on all segments. It's fueling a reversion to the mean and to the baseline, which requires a continued R&D investment back. So it does seem like a challenging circumstance. And obviously, let's be real, there's some level of bias here. I'm selling a solution where I'm hell-bent on equipping small businesses to harvest as much of the technology leverage as they possibly can. What's notable to me is that when I think about what activities, what mindsets, what factors correlate to that outcome, at this point, it's not the tech. The tech's there. The tech is there, ready to be used. It is the will to get your hands dirty. It's the will to embrace a re-architecture and a re-relating to what the work is. Is property management a series of one-off individual tasks that are executed to perform a service? Or is property management a conceptualization, an understanding of the nature of both the customer, of the asset, and of the workflows that result in delivering value and architecting the rails upon which work flows through the organization? That's what I would argue. If that's the job of property management, and if the upcoming wave of folks coming into the industry are embracing both that vision as well as the practical frontline skills, I'll just use Zapier because I think it's such a great example. Zapier is so obviously so powerful, and yet it is overwhelming. In general, it can be overwhelming, but it's especially overwhelming if you don't think that's your job.
Yep.
If you think that your job is doing property management in a way that doesn't include that, I mean, that would just downright piss somebody off to be told that they need to go start building Zaps. If by contrast, you believe that your job is architecting the way the work is done, that's reasonable. That's an ask. That's a conversation. That's an opportunity. It's leverage to be harvested. So I think part of the conversation we're having here is when we think about the trajectory, when we think about the future, is it more or less likely that the next generation coming in, the next generation leading, the next generation on the front lines is going to be more amenable to tech? Because right now there's a lot of folks saying, it's not for me. I'm overwhelmed.
Right.
And the follow-up question is, what does that mean? Does that mean it's not for you? Does that mean that you can't benefit? Or does that mean that you simply have a specialized skill set in your business that you need somebody else to know how to do? And how many other functions of your business does that already exist? Matthew, I'm not technical. I couldn't code my way out of a paper bag.
Right.
That has no bearing on the level of importance and significance and investment that we make in that function of our business. I'm monologuing now. That's my sensibilities about it.
I agree. Like, if you start talking to larger multifamily operators, a lot of them have a CTO, and you're like, what do you need a CTO in a property management company for? Well, you need the right person to put together the right tech stack. And so maybe if you're operating, 500 single family units, you might not need that
A fancy title,
right? But you need someone that can do the job of putting together the right tech stack.
Roll up your sleeves.
So you can deliver the service. And if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on that 500 person boots on the ground company where the owner of the business, that's his life and blood, right? He's worked sweat to make that business happen. They have a lot of leverage in these markets. Real estate is personal. It's emotional. It's local. There's a lot of value and there's a big reason why it's not consolidated very easily or quickly and continues not to. So I think you're just going to see a lot more people, especially you knock millennials for being lazy. I think they just don't like doing work that they know they don't have to if you apply tech.
Developers self-ascribe as being some of the laziest people on the planet, right? My co-founder is so deeply allergic to and intolerant of being asked to do manual things when it can be automated. I see what's going on in his brain when I suggest that, why don't we just control V in a spreadsheet for 10 minutes, 1,000 times, and that'll get it done. And immediately, the mind is turning. It's the sort of thing that when you see it, you can't unsee it. And the question is, how many more people are going to see that are coming into the workforce right now? I'd bet on that.
Yeah, I already see it in our customer base, even asking for certain pieces of technology to stay competitive in the markets they're in. I think that's a really good sign that technology is going to be a big answer for the future. And I love it when customers come up with, things like that. They're like, hey, I see these problems, and if we had tech that did this X, Y, and Z, we could compete very strategically in our marketplace. And I just see that happening more and more. When I joined AppFolio, we spent most of our time getting people from QuickBooks and spreadsheets. I remember us shipping computers to people for the first time. There's a famous picture of our our first VP of customer success installing a printer under a customer's desk. I mean, like, we're far away from that as an industry, right? Our biggest challenge early on was how do we get people to like get an internet connection so they can access our software. That's not a challenge anymore right now. I think it really comes down to how do we get them adopting the breadth of what we have to offer, and how do we get them adopting the other tech in the marketplace that's really going to drive their business forward.
I've communicated a couple of times in my newsletter and elsewhere the significance that I feel right now as a result of these marketplaces being opened up. And I think folks might not fully know what I mean, so I want to unpack it a bit more. At face value, it sounds like, oh, there's LeadSimple integration right now. Handy, useful, I'm stoked about it. That doesn't really encompass what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is AppFolio has AppFolio, Building as a marketplace, Rent Manager has a marketplace. I'm sure others will come alongside eventually. They have opened themselves up in such a way that the metaphor here is a step up. Point solutions, by definition, are from scratch, outside of the system of record. It's a total entity. It's a system of engagement that now can communicate with the system of record, but it was meant to be a standalone, really owning and committing to a use case. The enablement and the shift of what's being opened up now is to start with AppFolio, to start with the PMS in a given use case and its baseline functionality, which some customers may feel is unsatisfactory, which is why we have point solutions, but to start there and to build on top. Whether it's the MCU, whether it's the self-showing tech, whether it's Lisa, etc. That's the change that is driving that commentary on my behalf. So while the integrations that are being done right now look like opening up to these existing vendors and these household names that we know are coming in and can now talk to AppFolio, that's cool. That's interesting. I'm interested in wave 2. I'm interested in wave 3. And I'm interested how you guys are going to navigate this in light of the fact that you're so heavily curating. There's some kid somewhere who realizes that if he could build on top of what AppFolio has done, he could actually do something really, really baller. And it doesn't require a $5,000 check from his local VC. It doesn't have to be bare metal from scratch. It could be accretive. It could be that last 20%, the missing 20% that caused some customers to want to leave and use point solutions. What do you see there around the potential innovation in that area? And how are you guys going to handle that if you're looking to heavily curate, i.e., how will you make room for newer companies that want to build on top as opposed to the existing companies that have from the ground up point solutions and are looking to come in?
Yeah, it's a good question. And like, without doubt, that's where this is going. And you see it in other more mature technology spaces. This is where you're seeing it go, the second, third rounds. That's absolutely where it's going in the future.
I love you referenced that because this metaphor is actually fairly well baked in other places.
Totally.
Think about the Salesforce ecosystem, for example.
Totally. You QuickBooks is another great example of a very robust marketplace and ecosystem. So yeah, that's absolutely where it's going. I don't see us heavily curating. I see us like making sure our launch partners are great companies to go launch with. And then from there, we'll continue to add people onto an existing set of use cases powered by API and integration. As you mentioned, like the developer in his room thinking about how to build on top of our platform. That is definitely something that we have to think deeply about. How do we do that? How do we do it in a way that you don't have 10,000 hobbyists building little tools of low value and flooding a marketplace with noise, right? That's
You're talking about a Google Play Store.
Right. Something that has a lot of low value, hard to understand applications that a customer would have to figure out how all these different things work with like that true like person that's onto something and innovating. I don't know the answer to that quite frankly, today, but it's definitely something we're paying attention to carefully. I think like your Zapier integration, I've heard customers talk about doing some pretty like bizarre things with that. And I think that's great because you're giving them a playground, right? And some might build some one-off things that work for them, but no one else. But some others might build something that actually has real value.
It's a seedbed for product ideas for us, really.
It's an innovation playground, right? And so how do you build out an innovation playground so you're giving as much opportunity for innovation to happen? It's a good, challenging problem that I don't have a clear answer to today, but something we're thinking about for sure.
If we're going to sum it up, I would say this. I see more alignment across the marketplace, alignment that benefits the consumer now than at any point in my career. This competition that's driving higher quality results for clients of what they have access to, data portability. It's easy to have these conversations in a way that almost sounds like it's moralizing around like, what vendor can you trust? Who's going to have your back? Is this company going to get bought by PE? And then what's going to happen to my data? What matters is what you can control and what you have access to. It's about data portability. It's about access. This shift that I'm seeing is giving people more options for what to do with their data. That is what has me most excited.
Sure.
And people are going to express that in a million different ways. But knowing that people are not needing to make a bet on that this one vendor is the be all end all, or I can trust them, etc. Those things matter. Of course, that stuff matters. But what really matters is that if you change your mind, if you have a different sentiment, if you want to do something different, if you want to get in or out of a market or an opportunity, you can, because you actually have access to the data that you're putting in the system in the first place. That's the macro level benefit. And I'm loving what you guys are doing because it's fueling a lot of those possibilities. So I'm optimistic. I think that this space is just going to continue to innovate, and benefit the end consumer. So I'm optimistic, more optimistic than I've been in some time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The customer voice and the amount of dollars going in trying to capture that customer is just, it puts our customers in a very loud voice. And ultimately, that's really good for innovation, right? When they get to vote with their dollars. And you're right, like the data accessibility. I mean, I onboarded customers into our software. I know how big that problem is. It's hard to get data out of software, and you're going to see a lot more of that as these marketplaces take off. And it's ultimately, in my view, going to make greater property management companies.
I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate the courage and the candor of just having a really direct, frank conversation about where things are at. And I'm excited to continue to see what the future looks like, and specifically with the partnership between our companies, which between us, for those that are listening, we're leaning in on. These integrations are, they're the future for our business and for the use case enablement that it represents. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Jordan here, asking you, what do you got? What is a question you want to ask me? Can you stump me? Can you throw me something hard, perplexing, vexing, something you feel tied up in knots with? Throw it at me. I'll do my best to try and answer that question, to dissect it, to parse out the nuance, and maybe help you get a bit more clarity. I'm looking for questions as the basis for creating content, and you're looking for answers as the basis for clarity. And wouldn't it be perfect if those two things matched up? Drop a comment, send me an email, jordan@leadsimple.com. Let's stay in the conversation. Peace.